Welcome back to an Exclusive Tents video. Welcome back to the Exclusive Tents channel. It's been a hot minute since we've been able to make a video. The last part of 2021 was just extremely busy. We were trying to finish our orders. And then the beginning part of this year, 2022, it's off like a rocket. So we've just been having a hard time finding time to get into the studio, but here we are. Actually, you guys can kind of expect a new format. We're gonna try it out, depending on how terrible we are at it, where we just come in, we grab a cup of coffee in the morning, and we just sit in the studio and we just give you our thoughts, raw, unedited, no fancy footwork on that. We're just gonna come in and talk. So you might hear us fumble on our words, you might hear our dogs bark in the background here at our office, you might hear people come and go, but we're gonna try and do it more candidly. That way we can get content out to you faster and easier. So you get to laugh at us, mess up all the time, like you've already heard me do. But anyways, let's roll that intro and we'll get into the topic of today's video. Today, we're going to be talking about wood frame doors and windows. This is a question we get all the time. More specifically, people want to know the installation process of it. I think mostly people are a little bit intimidated by the idea and they think that it's a whole lot more work than it actually is. So we're going to just simply talk about the best way to install the wood frame doors and windows. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how to retroactively install those windows. Retroactively, well, I don't think that's the right way to say it. To install them after the fact, if you never went with that option in the first place. And we'll talk a little bit about how to do that. So let's talk about the best way to install a door first, and then we could talk about the windows and the installing one after the fact. So the best way to install a wood-framed door option in your tent is actually during the deck design phase and the construction of your deck. The best way to install a wood-framed door and window, they're basically the same, but the door, let's stay on that subject, which is you're going to install the vertical posts of the door frame that go through the deck. The deck acts as a collar to those posts, and they go down into their own cement footings below the deck, just like any vertical support for the deck. The reason you do it this way is to provide the rigidity necessary for the door frame, because when you're opening and closing doors, or even if it's a sliding glass door, there's a whole lot of movement and momentum and weight taking place in that. So if it's not going through the deck for the collar and into the cement footings, it will move a lot, too much actually. So this is the best way to install it, and this is the way that we recommend how to install it. I'm going to show you a drawing here now that shows you what this looks like. The framing going through the decking and down into their own cement footings. Now this is just a rough idea on how to do it, and each contractor is going to do it a little bit differently based off of the amenities that you're installing in the deck design itself, the type of soil that it's on. There's a whole lot of factors that go into it, but this is generally a good way for your contractor to get a visualization on how we recommend doing it, and they will probably modify it slightly, which is completely fine. So during the deck phase, you're building the door frame as illustrated, and a lot of clients ask, well, if we're building the door frame, how do we know that the tent is going to be there specifically? And that's a great question. So prior to us starting on your tents and you starting on your deck design, we would give you what's called a grid drawing. And this grid drawing will allow you to accurately and place exactly where the vertical posts of your frame is going to be. And it's going to also allow you to isolate exactly where your tent body is going to be on your deck. So you could build your deck, or you could design your deck, with confidence that the tent is going to be where you need it to be and relative to your door frame as well. So it's not a big deal whatsoever. And actually the end result, once your deck is built, because it's best to have your deck built and the door frames built prior to the tent arriving, or at least very close. That way your tents aren't sitting in storage or anything. But when your deck is actually complete, your deck is complete with all the wood door framing, and if you have it, window framing all scattered on your deck in their correct location. So it does look a little bit funny, and here's a image of what that kind of looks like. Anyways, let's assume that your deck is now built and your door frame has been installed as per the drawings that I showed you. The process of installing the tent to that door frame is actually relatively simple, and this is something that with our customers we talk with them beforehand, so they already know what they're getting into. But we would know that you would be installing a wood frame door or window on that specific panel of the tent, and we do a few things on our end, on the manufacturing end, to make sure that that is an easy process once you're setting up the tent. But now that your deck is set up in this scenario and your door frames, let's just focus on a door frame. Your door frame is also installed and set up correctly as per the drawings. You're going to set up the frame of your tent, and that frame of your tent is going to be set up on the grid drawings of on the deck that we provided you, so it's in the exact location it needs to be. That way when you set up your tent body, it's also going to be exactly where it needs to be relative to your door frame. So your frame's up, now you've got your shade fly and your raid fly up, and you hang the tent body, and now the tent body is hung underneath the frame. Well, you would go outside of the tent body now, and if you're looking at it as side profile view, your canvas wall would be pressing against your door frame that exists there now in this scenario. And you would then go to the outside of the door frame, and you would then literally go from the center part at the deck at the bottom and cut the canvas up till about 6 inches below the top of the horizontal part of the door frame. And from there you would then make a Y cut, one going up to diagonally to one corner and the other cut going diagonally to the other corner. And you're obviously now going to have the ability to pull the upper flap of that Y cut above the door frame, and the side flaps will also open now as well. You're going to want to trim a little bit of that canvas on the inside of the door frame away in horizontal cut. So the horizontal cut will be horizontal, vertical cuts will be horizontal to trim that canvas away. Remember, cut conservatively. You can always cut more if it's not enough, but if you cut too much, then you're kind of dealing with a different animal on how to solve that problem. So just be conservative, and when in doubt, reach out to us if you have any questions during that process. But we recommend leaving about 4 to 5 inches of extra canvas left over on the inside of the door frame. And what you would do is you would take that extra canvas and you would roll it. So for the vertical cuts, you would roll that extra vertical canvas tightly and neatly to the outside or inside of the door frame, depending on how you want to mount it. Let's assume it's a wood frame door in the scenario. You would then use carpentry staples to secure that rolled canvas to the wooden door frame. And then you would do that for each other side, the vertical part and the vertical part and the top horizontal part. From there, now that the canvas is used, you've used carpentry staples to secure it, you would then come in with a nice wood trim and cover that up and secure that wood trim to the door frame. And that creates a perfect marriage line between the canvas and the door frame where it looks like it just seamlessly integrates. And that's generally how it's done, and it's not very complicated, and it's not a stressful install whatsoever. Now you can do this with single doors, double French doors, sliding glass doors, doesn't matter what at all. Any door is generally installed that way. There might be some small nuances, but that's a great generalization of how to install it. Now, also clients do aluminum frame doors and windows, and the process is still exactly the same. It still goes through your deck, it still gets secured in the ground via footings, and the canvas still gets cut exactly as I described. The only difference is how you secure the canvas to the framing of the door or window. If it's aluminum, we recommend clients use rivets and a piece of strap aluminum to secure the canvas to the aluminum frame. And that, again, is a very simple process. And the install then after that goes exactly the same. So I want to quickly talk about the window installation and then kind of talk again about how to install wood frame doors and windows after the fact if you never planned to do it in the first place, and after a year of ownership you've decided I would like wood frame doors and windows. So let's just talk about the wood framed window option. You would if you install it from the beginning phases, it would those vertical posts go through your deck and into their own cement footings, just like a door frame does. And the canvas gets cut just as I described and rolled to the outside and stapled and or riveted and then trimmed as I described as well. And then a glass panel gets installed in that frame versus a door. Now this glass panel generally goes all the way down to the deck. So it's not a floating window like you see in a traditional or a conventional structure. The window goes all the way down to the ground, and that's the way we recommend doing it. You could frame it in a way that allows you to have a floating window, which means that it doesn't go all the way down to the deck or platform, but doing it that way shows a little bit more of the infrastructure side of it. It looks a little bit more unfinished that way once it is complete. So we do recommend taking the glass all the way down to the platform, and here's a video of what that looks like. Now I want to talk about installing wood frame doors and windows after the fact. You've had the tent for a year now, and for whatever reason you've decided I would like a wood frame door or window. Well, probably since you didn't plan for that initially, you're not going to be able to use the vertical posts of the frame to go through the deck and into their concrete footings. And maybe you can, but let's assume you can't, the worst case scenario. Well, there's a couple ways to do that. And if you are on the fence of like, I may want to install wood frame doors and windows down the road, the best bet you can do to hedge against that indecision would be to, rather than going with the vertical steel frame leg option on our tents, is to go with the vertical wood post option. And the reason being is that since you won't be able to put the wood frame door through the deck in these kind of retro installs, the best bet is to then use those vertical wood poles that support the tent structure as your bracing point for these doors and windows, to make sure they have the rigidity they need when customers are going in and out of them, or if you and your family are going in and out of them. A great visual representation of this is what the Nest did in Arkansas, which is a project we did a few years ago, and Cheryl did a great job integrating her aluminum framed doors into the vertical wood posts of the tent. And she did this in a structural way and an aesthetic way. So what she did is she just took an aluminum frame and she put that on the deck itself. So it's not going through the decking through as a collar and into their own cement footings. And to brace that, she bridged the gap between the end of those vertical aluminum posts, and she bridged it very aesthetically and carefully to the vertical wood posts of the tent. And here's an image of that so you can see what that looks like. And she also did this that it looked totally integrated. It was structurally, aesthetically, perfectly installed. And this is kind of our running way to deal with retro installs of vertical, our retro install version of wood frame doors and windows. Just simply using the vertical wood posts of the tent as the structural brace, which is required. And there's many ways to do this. Cheryl's way at the Nest was a great way she did it, and there's a couple different ways that you could do it, but it also allows for, you could put lanterns in those areas, you could put electrical outlets in those areas, so it really does offer you a great aesthetic retro install version of a wood frame door or window. And that's the way we recommend doing it. If you don't have vertical wood posts, we highly recommend talking to us first about installing it. That way we can do it properly, because otherwise it gets a little bit tricky if you don't have the vertical wood poles installed, and we would get in contact with you, or you could reach out to us and we would give you some recommendations on how to do it and a little bit differently, but we won't dive into those explanations in this video. That generally covers wood frame doors and windows. What I'm going to do now is roll a series of 3D renderings going through the process of installing a wood frame door into a tent. And these renderings give you a great illustration and step-by-step process of the install. Again, this is just one way to do it, and it's just a recommendation for you as the customer or your contractor to review prior to install. But take a look at these images, and great to see you guys again, and we'll see you in the next video.